The multiplicity of truth. Truth is a difficult concept, and there are two traps that people fall into when discussing truth. The first one is the hardcore, obvious, truth is this and nothing else, and let's call it exclusive or absolute truth. Or on the reverse, people that fall in the other trap of saying, well, truth does not exist. It depends on everyone's opinion. It's totally relativistic. So we would like to propose some way of escaping this strict dualism about truth as harsh, hardcore, or purely undeterminate and relativistic by showing how actually they are a different conception of truth. All of them are useful. They are reliable in their own way, but we should be conscious how we are using them when we are using them. So the first one is probably the most common one. It's called the correspondence theory, where truth consists of statements or principles that correspond to the actual state of affair. So a statement is true if it matches with the way things are perceived. This implies empirical evidence, observation, reproducible experiments, expert testimony, consensus, all the methods actually used by science. Although science does not consider them as truth, but as simply some functioning approximation that we will discuss later. But that's when people say it's true because it corresponds to what we know about the world. A second concept is called coherence theory, where a statement is true if it is coherently fits within an established system of thoughts, of other propositions, if it's coherent, right? Like that's what a policeman uses when he questions someone, and it tries to check if all these statements fit together. And that's what is used in mathematics, for example, where you cannot have experiments because it doesn't deal with material reality, but it has to fit. Demonstrations, axiom theorems have to fit together in order to be considered true. A third principle is called the pragmatic theory of truth, where truth is determined through practical implication of statements. If it works, if it has useful consequences, it's considered true. If somebody tells you something about the world, say, well, show me if it works, then I know it's true. So it's purely a pragmatic utilitarian way of showing that something is true. A fourth concept is the constructivist theory, where truth is constructed by social processes, which generally are historically and culturally specific. They might be understood through some narrative or story, but that's how civilization are developed. That's how society is being structured, and certain things, by being considered true, harmonize or structure this society. Then we have the scientific perspective. In science, a statement is often considered reliable or true if it's supported by empirical evidence, and if the examined phenomena can be reliably reproduced under specific condition. But scientific truths are often considered as provisional, meaning they're accepted until further evidence suggests they need to be revised. That's the history of science when we look at it. So by principle, any scientific theory should be falsifiable, meaning that it can be tested and potentially proven wrong, which goes against the common intuition about science as providing hardcore truth. No, the history of science is to modify thesis, modified principle, modified axioms of thinking, right? So in that sense, it is not an absolute, right? On the other side of the spectrum, we have religious or spiritual perspective, because many religious traditions claim to possess some ultimate truth regarding the nature of existence. And these cannot be falsifiable, about morality, about the divine, about some ontological principle. These truths often rely on scriptures, on revelation, on the message of some very wise person, and it can be defended as grounding our perspective about reality. But as well, it can relate to personal belief, whatever mental construct that guides our existence, determining our thought or actions. So all in our life, there are certain principles of whatever nature, practical, moral, aesthetic, that we believe are totally reliable and are considered true because they guide our life. Then we have artistic or literary perspectives. In art and literature, truth does not refer so much to some factual accuracy, but rather to emotional, experiential, existential authenticity, because some work of arts provide profound insights into the nature of reality, the human reality, the reality of the world. And we see, in particular with abstract art, how we get insights, but in no way does it look like the immediate reality, but it gives us insight about this reality. Then we have truth in its everyday use. In daily life, truth often refers to some kind of honesty, integrity, being true to oneself or others. It often has a moral connotation. So you can even say someone is true. There's something truth, reliable, because you feel there's no lie, no deception. There's honesty, there's authenticity, right? But to conclude, though, we should address the very postmodern, very actual postmodern conception of truth, which is very relativistic, which influences our society, which argues that truth is subjective, that it is constructed through power dynamics and through cultural narratives, which implies, of course, there's no absolute or objective truth, since it is always relative to some intellectual scheme. And what is interesting precisely is to identify how some truth is grounded in this scheme, right? Which is different from using that to say, well, nothing is true. So there's still some grounding. But it is interesting to see their subjectivity of truth, the cultural subjectivity of truth. So to conclude this idea, maybe we could propose that truth, an interesting conception of truth, would be our capacity to go through these different paradigms of truth, to be conscious of them, to be familiar with them, and to see how they can modify our vision of the world, but to be capable of going through these different schemes and be able to modify the way we look at truth in different situations, which is a very interesting and challenging intellectual exercise about truth.